Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, Story 59.
Imagine training your whole life, right? You become this undefeated regional champion, you're standing in front of a massive crowd, and then you are permanently crippled by a single gentle tap from a polite young woman in a town square.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's the ultimate nightmare for the ego, isn't it?
Right, huh? Today, we're doing a dive into a 17th century Chinese text that explains, well, exactly how that happens, and more importantly, why the champion completely brought it on himself.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Oh.
We're diving into a story from a collection called Liao Zai Zi, or Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio. And this specific tale from volume 59 is titled Martial Arts.
Which is such a perfect deep dive for us because, we usually treat learning as this simple equation, right? Like time invested equals competence gained.
Yeah, exactly. Put your 10,000 hours in, you get the gold star.
Yeah. Right. But this text completely strips away that comfort. It exposes this hidden developmental minefield of acquiring any kind of profound knowledge, whether that's martial arts in the 1600s or, mastering a complex technical skill today.
So our entry point into this minefield is a protagonist named Li Chao. He lives on the western borders of Zibo, and the author establishes his character immediately, like right up front.
Yeah, and it's not what you'd expect, is it?
No, not at all. Li Chao is fundamentally hospitable, he's generous, he has means, and he genuinely enjoys taking care of people who pass through his area.
Which totally subverts our expectations. The text isn't setting him up as some mustache-twirling villain.
Right.
He's just a comfortable, privileged guy who considers himself a benefactor. And that makes his upcoming psychological blind spots so much more relatable, I think, to the average person, navigating their own career or education.
Definitely. And that hospitality is actually what kicks off the entire chain of events.
Yeah.
So a wandering monk comes through Zibo begging for alms. Leech brings him in, feeds him incredibly well.
A huge feast.
Yeah, and the monk is so moved by this abundant meal that he reveals a secret. He's actually a monk from the legendary Shaolin Temple. So, to repay Li for the food, the monk offers to teach him what he calls his modest martial arts skills.
And that phrasing, the monk's phrasing there, is our very first clue about the nature of true expertise.
Modest, right.
Right. He calls his skills modest. Because when someone has spent decades mapping out the vast depths of a discipline, they become acutely aware of, how much they still don't know.
Yeah, like the ocean just keeps getting deeper.
Exactly. The universe of their chosen field is so huge that their own knowledge feels small in comparison, so they offer it humbly.
Li, on the other hand, lacks that perspective entirely.
Oh, completely.
He just jumps at this opportunity. He houses the monk in his guest quarters, provides for his every need, and throws himself into training day and night. Like he is entirely dedicated.
Good student, at least initially. Yeah.
For a bit. And this intensive training goes on for exactly 3 months. So at the end of those 3 months, Li feels incredibly skilled and immensely pleased with himself.
Of course he does.
And the monk finally asks him, have you benefited? And Li looks at a Shaolin monk, like a literal Shaolin monk, and boldly claims, I have learned everything you are capable of.
Huh. We really have to look at the cognitive mechanisms happening in Li's brain right here.
Okay, let's unpack this because...
Well, modern psychology refers to this as the novice's peak in the learning curve, right? It's a classic manifestation of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh, yeah. Mount Stupid.
Exactly, Mount Stupid. When you first start learning something complex, your brain is rapidly acquiring, basic vocabulary and fundamental mechanics.
Right.
So you're experiencing these massive, frequent dopamine hits because every single day you're doing something you couldn't do yesterday.
It's like doing a 3-month intensive language boot camp on your phone, right? You get a perfect score on the app, your brain gives you that little victory chime, and you immediately think, oh, I'm ready to debate complex philosophy with a native speaker in a bustling market.
Yes.
You have the vocabulary, but you lack the fluency.
Fluency is the perfect word for this. What's fascinating here is that the danger of those first 3 months is that the student acquires just enough knowledge to perform the mechanics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not enough contextual knowledge to perceive their own ignorance. The brain literally cannot measure the gap between its current ability and true mastery.
Because it doesn't even know what true mastery looks like yet.
Exactly. Lister has learned the alphabet of Shaolin martial arts, and his brain is tricking him into believing he has read the entire library.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it. And because his brain is telling him he's a master, well, he decides to prove it.
He's got to show off.
Naturally. So the monk laughs at his claim and simply asks for a demonstration, like eagerly strips off his outer garments, spits on his hands, and starts just like jumping around the courtyard.
Oh, boy.
The text actually says he moves like a flying ape and a falling bird.
Aha.
He is leaping, spinning, burning massive amounts of energy, and finally he crosses his arms proudly, just, waiting for the applause.
Let's break down the biomechanics of what Lai is actually doing here,
Yeah.
because he is performing the idea of a martial artist.
Yeah. Like an action movie?
Right. Novices equate physical exertion with effectiveness. They think that, well, if they're sweating and breathing hard and moving super fast, they must be executing high-level techniques.
Right, because it feels hard, so it must be advanced.
Exactly. But from a physics standpoint, leaping like an ape and imitating a falling bird involves just a massive waste of kinetic energy. He is launching his mass into the air where he has, no leverage, no grounding.
It's floating up there.
Yeah, no structural stability whatsoever.
And the monk clearly sees all that wasted energy. He laughs again and says, since you have exhausted my abilities, let's spar.
The ultimate test.
Right. So Lee aggressively starts dancing around, looking for an opening, trying to exploit the monk's weak spots. And the monk just waits.
Classic master move.
Yeah, he just stands there. Then he delivers a single flying kick, just one movement. And Lee is instantly launched backward over 10 feet and just lands flat on his back.
Ouch. But, that is the difference between performing and executing.
Yeah.
True mastery in biomechanics is defined by the economy of motion. The monk doesn't need to mimic animals or bounce around the courtyard. He uses precise anatomical alignment, timing, and physics.
He just waits for the perfect second.
Right. He finds the exact moment Lee's center of gravity is compromised by all that flashy movement, and he applies maximum force with minimum effort.
But, Lai's reaction to getting launched 10 feet through the air is kind of interesting here. He gets up, puts his hands on the ground, and actually shows deep shame. Like, he actually begs the monk to stay and give him more instruction before the monk eventually leaves a few days later. So, to me, I read that, and it sounds like a guy who realized he messed up. Like he got humbled, and now he understands he needs to actually learn the deeper mechanics.
I see why you'd think that, but, well, shame is a powerful emotion, but it is not the same thing as humility.
Interesting. So you don't think he learned his lesson?
I would argue Lai didn't learn the core lesson at all. I mean, he's embarrassed that his performance was proven hollow, sure, but his motivation hasn't shifted from external validation to internal growth.
Oh, I see.
He just realizes his current toolkit isn't big enough to win the validation he craves.
So he just realized he needed to download version 2.0 of the monk's software before considering himself the ultimate master.
Yes, exactly. He wants more instruction not to actually better himself, but just to ensure he never gets embarrassed in front of an audience again.
Wow, yeah. And the text really supports that theory completely, because as soon as the monk leaves, Lees takes his newly updated toolkit on a massive ego tour.
Oh, the ego tour.
He travels north and south, taking on challengers everywhere he goes, and he wins. He remains entirely undefeated. So his local arrogance, thinking he was better than his master in his own backyard, it mutates into this sprawling regional arrogance.
Right, because he is hunting for larger and larger arenas to feed that dopamine loop we talked about earlier.
And he eventually arrives in a place called Lixia. And here's where it gets really interesting.
This is my favorite part of the story.
Yeah. So in Lixia, he finds the ultimate arena, a packed public square. And in the middle of this overflowing crowd is a young, delicate-looking nun performing martial arts.
Just doing a street performance.
Right. And she stops and calls out to the audience 3 times. She says tumbling around all by herself is quite cold and lonely, and asks if any, quote, good bodies want to step into the square and spar just for fun.
And how does the crowd react?
The crowd's reaction is dead silence. They just look at each other. No one moves.
Which is so telling. There is this profound collective intelligence in crowds when it comes to observing physical competence.
Totally.
Even a completely untrained observer can subconsciously recognize when someone is moving with lethal efficiency. The crowd sees her relaxed posture, her balance, her total lack of tension while calling out a challenge.
They just know.
Yeah, they inherently understand that stepping into that square is dangerous.
But Lee's ego entirely overrides that basic survival instinct. I mean, imagine you're Lei, you're undefeated, you see a young, delicate nun calling at a crowd, and no one is stepping up. He gets what the text literally calls the itch to fight.
The itch.
Yeah. He steps forward, just full of pride. He looks at this young woman and thinks, oh, here's an opportunity to prove my dominance in front of hundreds of people.
And think about how often this happens in modern professional settings, right?
Right.
Someone learns a new management framework or some highly technical concept, and they go out of their way to dominate a meeting or to pick apart a colleague's presentation just to publicly validate their own recent learning.
Just to show everyone how smart they are now.
Exactly. Laya isn't looking at the nun as a fellow practitioner. He is looking at her as a mirror to reflect his own greatness back to him. It's a predatory mindset, but it's disguised as a sporting challenge.
And that predatory blindness is exactly what sets up the climax of the story. Laya steps forward, they cross hands to begin sparring. Instantly, like before a real strike is even thrown, the nun stops the fight.
Before a single punch.
Yeah, she feels his technique and says, "This is the Shaolin sect." She forces Laya to reveal his master's name. When he finally admits it was the wandering monk, her entire demeanor shifts.
Oh, yeah.
She shows immense respect, puts her hands together, refers to him affectionately as the silly monk, and says, "Ah, you are Monk Han's disciple. I concede. I am willing to bow to the wind."
And her ability to read his entire physical vocabulary through a single touch, that is the hallmark of profound expertise.
It's incredible.
She doesn't need to see his flashy moves, just the tension in his forearms and the alignment of his wrists. They tell her exactly where his knowledge comes from.
Okay, but see, if I'm lying in that moment, I'm thinking my reputation precedes me.
Yeah.
Like, I've been touring the country, going undefeated. I cross hands with her. She realizes how strong I am, and she gives up. She literally surrenders in front of the whole town. I mean, I'd take the win and walk away feeling like a god. Why on earth wouldn't he just take the win? She literally offered him an out.
Huh, well, see, you're falling into the exact same trap Lee did.
I am.
Yeah, you're interpreting the interaction through a purely individualistic lens.
Oh.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, in 17th century martial arts, and really in many traditional knowledge systems, skills do not belong to the individual. They belong to the lineage.
The lineage, right.
Knowledge is a collective inheritance passed down through generations.
So wait, her concession has nothing to do with Lee's personal skill?
Absolutely nothing. Zero. When she says, "I bow to the wind," she is bowing to the source of the wind, the Shaolin tradition and Monk Han.
Oh, wow.
She's acknowledging that they share a cultural and martial ecosystem. And out of deep respect for his teacher, she refuses to humiliate his student in a public square. She's actually offering him a profound spiritual and social courtesy.
But Lee's incapable of recognizing that distinction, which is his ultimate downfall. Because for him, martial arts is entirely about his personal vanity.
Right.
He thinks she's terrified of him. He refuses to accept her concession. The crowd starts egging them on, sensing the tension. Finally, she agrees to a very light spar, calling it a meeting of minds.
Just a light spar.
Right. And Lee looks at her, sees she is young and delicate, and decides he wants to definitively crush her to boost his reputation. They start sparring, and mid-movement, she just stops and smiles. She refuses to speak.
She is giving him one final chance to de-escalate. She's signaling with total physical relaxation that she is not engaged in a fight for survival or ego.
And Lee completely misreads the silence as total paralysis.
Of course he does.
He thinks she is frozen with fear, so he launches his ultimate attack. He throws an aggressive flying kick. It is the exact same move the monk used to defeat him years ago.
Oh, the irony is staggering here. He is regurgitating a technique that was used to humble him, and he's attempting to use it to humiliate someone else. He's literally trying to play the master.
And it backfires in the most brutal way imaginable. As he launches his flying kick, the nun simply brings her 5 fingers together and chops down on his thigh. Just a chop. The text describes it so vividly. Lee feels like his knee was struck by a heavy sword or an axe. He instantly collapses to the ground, completely paralyzed. The nun smiles, politely apologizes to the crowd for being rash to a guest, and casually walks away. Lee is left crippled. It takes him over a month just to be able to walk again from that single tap.
We really have to look at the anatomy of that strike. The 5-fingered axe sounds like magic, but it is applied physics.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something out of a superhero movie.
It does, but think about it. Live is launching his entire body weight into the air through a flying kick. All of his kinetic energy is moving forward.
Right.
The nun doesn't need to swing wildly. She just needs to understand structural anatomy. By bringing her fingers together, she focuses force into a tiny surface area.
Ouch. Right.
She strikes a nerve cluster or a critical tendon in his thigh at the exact moment his leg is fully extended and bearing the kinetic load of his jump. She uses his own arrogant momentum to destroy his structural integrity.
So he basically shattered his own leg against her fingers.
Precisely. The master doesn't generate the destructive force. The novice brings the destructive force to the master, and the master simply directs it.
Wow. It is a devastating reality check for Li. But we don't fully understand the magnitude of what happened until the final resolution of the text. So, over a year later, Monk Han, the teacher Li originally learned from, returns to Zibo to visit his old student.
Finally.
Yeah, and Li, likely looking for validation or sympathy, tells the monk the whole story about the nun and Lixia.
I mean, Lee probably expected his master to be outraged on his behalf, right? Like to vow revenge against this woman who crippled his student.
Oh, absolutely. But the monk's reaction is the exact opposite. He is absolutely horrified. He scolds Li intensely, saying, "You are so reckless. Why provoke her?" And then the monk drops a bombshell that recontextualizes this entire deep dive.
Here it is.
He tells Li, "Luckily, you told her my name first. Otherwise, your leg would have been completely severed."
Oh, man, it just forces Lee and really the reader to reevaluate every single frame of that interaction in the public square.
So what does this all mean? Think about the gravity of that statement for a second. That polite five-finger tap that felt like an axe and left a grown man bedridden for a month. That wasn't her attacking him. That was a merciful warning shot.
She was holding back.
She was holding back the entire time.
And this really synthesizes the core philosophy of the text. True mastery is defined by restraint. The nun possessed lethal catastrophic capability. She had the biomechanical knowledge to literally sever a limb with her bare hands.
Which is terrifying.
It is. But her actions were entirely dictated by her respect for the broader context of the knowledge. Her respect for Monk Han and the Shaolin lineage functioned as a governor on her power.
Wow.
Lime operated purely on ego, using everything he had to try and destroy her. She operated on ethics, using a fraction of her power to merely educate him.
He only survived because he was riding the coattails of his master's reputation. Like all of those physical skills he spent years honing, the techniques he used to go undefeated across the North and the South, they did absolutely nothing to save him when he finally encountered a real master. Nope. It was the name of his teacher, the very lineage he misunderstood and disrespected, that kept his leg attached to his body.
It forces us to confront the limits of pure technical skill. In any field, if your technical ability outpaces your character or your respect for the discipline or your situational awareness, you are eventually going to launch a flying kick at a brick wall.